Well, welcome everyone to Big Tent USA. We're so glad to have you here today. And my name is Kitty Douglas. I'm board president at Big Tent. At Big Tent, we are steadfast to our commitment to defending our democratic values, the Constitution, and the rule of law. Our goal is to empower you with facts and calls to action so you can become a stronger, more effective advocate for our country. One of our guests today is going to be providing us with those calls to action, and we will be sure to make sure that you have everything you need to do those letters after this call. I am so excited to welcome back to Big Tent two stalwart pro-democracy advocates. Sylvester Johnson serves as the voter outreach and data manager for VoteRiders. A Georgia native, Sylvester's commitment to civic engagement began in high school through his work with organizations such as the Special Olympics of Georgia. Since joining VoteRiders, Sylvester has spent more than 6 years helping ensure that all eligible citizens have the information and support they need to exercise their fundamental right to vote. Jessica Craven, a friend of Big Tent and democracy, is a community organizer, activist, mom, and elected member of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. She's also the author of the must-read newsletter, Chop Wood, Carry Water, a daily actions email that's been published 5 days a week since November of 2016. Jessica has made it her mission to get regular people more involved with politics on both the federal and local level. And so with that, I will turn the call over to Sylvester Johnson of VoteRiders, who has some slides for us to share.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kitty. Again, I am glad to be back with everyone at Big Tent. As you already heard, I am from VoteRiders. I've been with VoteRiders for going on 7 years. It will be 7 years, I believe, in August or September. But one of the great partnerships and memberships that we've had while I've been here at VoteRiders is our work with Big Tent. And we're going to make sure that continues, and we have some of your help as we continue to write letters that have an impact across some of our target states. And so for me, I do have a couple of slides, as you heard already, that are going to kind of talk a little bit about the work that we do around voter ID, my purpose, and then I've seen some of the questions that you already have for me, so I'm looking forward to answering those and having a great conversation with Jessica. But with that being said, I think I'm going to share my screen, and I'll jump into those slides that I do have prepared for you all. Awesome. So I do believe you all are seeing my screen. Again, this is just my introductory slide. Protect the vote. That is what we're here for. And so let's jump in to a little bit more about VoteRiders. To show who we are, VoteRiders was founded back in 2012 as a direct response to the growing number of voter ID laws popping up across the country. We are a nonpartisan organization, so that means anybody that we engage with, anybody that reaches out to us, anybody that my colleagues interact with on the ground, we will provide that assistance with them, making sure they're able to get the ID they need and make sure they're able to navigate that process. And one reason why the work that we do is so important, why we're active across the United States, is because of this big number that you're seeing on your screen right now. 34.5 million voting age Americans do not have a current government issued voter ID. And so when you look at that, when you think about that, that is typically either a driver's license or that state's state ID. And so when we see that many people needing an ID, and we know that there's already 38 states that require ID when you want to go cast a ballot, that's why we're springing into action. That's why we look for great partners like Big Tent to make sure that we're able to contact as many voters as possible and have that impact across the United States. But then sometimes folks ask, who is most impacted by voter ID laws? And voter ID laws, it's so crazy because it can impact people across the board and people from different spectrums. I know when I was a kid, the first thing I wanted to do when I turned 15, I wanted to get my learner's permit so I could be ready to drive and be out the door when I was 16. But that's just not the case for a lot of folks across the board. But we know that folks who are most impacted by these voter ID laws who don't have ID is Black and brown voters, Indigenous voters, youth and student voters who may not have had the same upbringing as me, voters with disabilities, low-income and unhoused voters, newly naturalized citizens, formerly incarcerated individuals, non-binary folks, and folks whose primary language may not be English. So again, you never know who's impacted by voter ID laws, and that's why we are spreading and broadcasting our message across the board, because we want to impact and make sure that we're able to serve everyone. And this kind of just shows the slide talking that you're seeing on your screen now, kind of shows the impact and why the work that we do helps tamp down on confusion. And confusion is widespread for several reasons. You'll be seeing that big stat that's on your screens now. 55% of the folks that we work with don't know that you need to bring ID with you when you are in a voter ID state. And so when we see that many people going in action, and my work specifically is alerting those folks, whether that's through our letter writing program, whether that's through our texting program, our phone banking program, or just interacting with voters. We want to make sure that folks are prepared, because a lot of folks may already have the ID they need, but we want to make sure that that ID is part of their voting plan. And so we are out making sure we're outfitting the voters with that information. And if they need any help, if they don't have what they need, they know that we are the leading resource to provide that. And so now what you're seeing on your map is a pretty colorful map of the United States. But I'm going to go through what some of these colors mean quickly, kind of talk about voter ID across the country. So let's talk about the states that are in black, states like California, which may not be in the black for too long, but these are states without voter ID laws in place. If you are from California, or if you're aware of what's going on in California, you know they have an initiative to possibly add voter ID to their voting procedures moving forward, and that's going to be on the ballot come November. But let's switch over and talk about states that do have voter ID laws in effect. If you're looking at states that are kind of in that bluish, maybe periwinkle color, these are states that have had voter ID laws prior to 2021. And then if you move over to states that are in that pinkish colors, these are states that either introduced new or stricter voter ID laws since 2021. I always like to point out Georgia, because I am a Georgia boy myself, and we've had voter ID laws prior to 2021, but we made them stricter after 2020, and after that 2021 election, we increased our voter ID laws when it came to voting by mail. And so that was the big change that happened here in Georgia. But if you want to look over to other states that are in that pink, you can look over to North Carolina. North Carolina is the state that has introduced voter ID laws for the first time since 2021. And so, again, I'll give folks another second to check out that map before I jump back into the presentation. And then I kind of like to talk about the impact. I know I've seen some of the questions already coming from the audience, and I know we're going to dive into more as we get started. But I like to use this as a point, because we're jumping back to another midterm year. I was here at VoteRiders, but this was our midterm in 2022. And we were working in one of our target states. We have 8 target states, and Texas is one of those. And we were reaching out to voters who had an issue voting in the primary election. What you'll see on your screen is, through the work that we've done and the work that we did back in 2022, is we reached out to those voters via text messaging, via our letter writing program. And we can see, as we're talking on the screen, that 92% of the voters we contacted via letter writing, 87% of the voters that we contacted through our text banking program successfully voted when it came time for that general election back in 2022. And again, sounds far away, but it's not. It's kind of the prime example of the crowd that we're working with and we're pursuing right now here this year in 2026. And so again, I always love to share that information, because people say, well, who are we texting? Who are we letter writing to? Who are we engaging with? We're engaging with voters who have either expressed that they need assistance, voters that we know have been haven't been able to vote, voters that fit into those groups that we know are most impacted by voter ID laws. And those are the people that we're engaging with in Texas, but across the board. And that's who we're making sure that they are prepared to have a voice. And again, this kind of just shows the impact of VoteRiders across the board, the different ways that we do it. Again, I'm leading our outreach to voters, our engagement with voters across the board. But I have a team, I have great staff members that help with my work, and that's in our target states. And also, we help voters across the board in any voter ID state where we might not have people on the ground to provide that assistance. And again, I said I was going to keep this short and sweet because I know we're going to have a conversation and I know we have some questions. But this is the last slide I have that I wanted to share with you all. Again, make sure that you're up to date on the work that we're doing, and you can follow us on social media across the board at VoteRiders. Again, you can see all of the work that we're doing, any updates that come across around voter ID. And then I'll always want to encourage people to get involved with us. And we're going to talk about a little later how you can do that and have an impact. But volunteer at voteriders.org or voteriders.org/volunteer. Those are going to be the ways that you can make sure that you're receiving our email updates for our volunteers, making sure that you're having an impact and that you're involved in all the great work that we're doing. And so you heard a little bit about me. I hope I gave you enough background about VoteRiders, and I'm ready to answer some of your questions and talk a little bit more to Jessica. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and say what's up to Jessica. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sylvester. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here. It's great to see a great crowd here. And that was really, really inspiring. In Texas, before we get into the questions that are written here, I'm really genuinely curious because those Texas numbers were amazing. What sort of text messages or letters did you send to those voters? Talk to us a little bit more about what information you gave them and how you helped them.
And so that's a great question because we have those programs in Texas and our target states, but this was more targeted. We have a general letterhead or a general text message that we send to folks to make sure that they have the ID that they need, that they're prepared. But when we're talking specifically about that 2022 campaign, we got those that information from open records requests, and so we saw that these voters had an issue voting and their ballots weren't able to successfully be cast in that primary. And so we had targeted messages to them and say, hey, we are aware that you tried to vote, you weren't able to successfully vote, and we're here to help. These are the steps you need to take. We know that you had issues with your ID. And so we kind of more pointed messages, not as close to the general messages that we send to folks, but we wanted to make sure that they were aware of this. And what we came back with when we were texting folks, because texting, you get kind of a quicker response than writing a letter than the snail mail. But some of the folks weren't aware that this happened. They thought that they had sent in either their absentee ballot or whatever it is, and they said, "Oh, I've washed my hands. I'm done." And so we wanted to make sure that they knew that you had this issue and say, "Hey, let's come back and let me make sure that we can help you through this process and that you're prepared and that you can successfully cast that ballot when November comes."
That is incredible. And if someone needs an ID, you all will help them get that and you help cover the fees for it. Is that correct?
Through the whole process, we help people from start to finish because a lot of people are on different parts of the spectrum. Some folks need help all the way through, and that means getting supporting documents like a birth certificate, a social security card, things like that. And then there's other folks that say, hey, I just need help understanding this process, and say, when we help them on that part of the spectrum. But we help folks along the way. We help folks get a ride to the DMV here in Georgia. We call it the DDS, but we will help folks along that way to make sure that they're prepared and they have what they need. And it's just so interesting when you work with folks because there's folks that start at the beginning who don't have any of those supporting documents that need help all the way to the finish line. And then folks that are just so confused by the process because it can be a little a jumble. We help them to that part as well.
That's incredible. It's really such an amazing service. And I think that if more people knew about what y'all were doing, they would be so supportive because it's incredible. And I don't know of other organizations that do exactly that. Let's see. How is the feeling around voting in Georgia? You're from Georgia. Since the ballots were taken by this administration, how does it feel there?
Georgia is it's always been kind of the same for me growing up. Again, Georgia has always had voter ID laws, and so I've always been prepared for voting. But people sometimes want to question the processes or question what's going on. But the thing is, um, you don't see any issues when it comes to that, and that's kind of what is the drawback, or when you see people or naysayers saying things that are, oh, we can't trust this election. The election system is fine, and the way that we vote here in Georgia has been doing great. And I'm actually going to go. I know it's kind of contrary, but we have our runoff coming up for several elections. I know the bigger ones are coming up for the Georgia or for the Republican nominee, but there is a lot of down ballot races that are also going onto the runoff. And so we want to just make sure that folks are paying attention, are aware, and that they have that voice to vote. And so I might have voted in the other primary passed, but I will be going to vote before the 16th next Tuesday.
Fantastic. And then we have a question also from North Carolina, from Lynn. I live in North Carolina and wonder if we, meaning North Carolina, are a target state. How soon are you inviting help this summer, closer to the election? Talk to us about North Carolina. Is that a target state for VoteRiders?
Well, that is a great question. And I'm happy to say that North Carolina is already one of our target states here at VoteRiders. We do have 8 target states, and let me try to name those in order off the top of my head. Arizona, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Wisconsin. I think I named all 8 off the top of my head. And if I didn't, excuse me. But we are already doing that work in North Carolina. Again, North Carolina was always an interesting state because literally since the inception, I've been that VoteRiders for about 7 years during my time. We were focused on North Carolina because North Carolina had those voter ID laws going through their courts. They had recommended them, and they were getting pushed back, and they were being dealt with during in that court system per se for a while. So we were prepared to work in North Carolina before they actually had voter ID laws enacted. And so once they did enact those laws, we already had some great folks on the ground. That was led by one of my colleagues. Her name is Pam, and we were ready to like put our foot down. And so we have a great North Carolina team, and then we just also have some background folks who aren't doing necessarily the day-to-day work in North Carolina, but they're kind of already in that and based in that state, so kind of got ahead on everything that's going on. So North Carolina has always been a priority here at VoteRiders.
That is awesome. All right, and jumping over now to Texas, someone is saying that they have volunteered for the Texas letter writing campaign and they loved it. They would like to know if a Spanish letter will be made available, especially for Texas. And then also maybe just we'll segue right into talking to people about how they can volunteer to write letters with you, because I think a lot of people are asking. As someone said, I've signed up to volunteer with VoteRiders. However, I get stuck in your system. Anyone I can contact for help. So let's talk about Spanish letter writing. And then if you can talk a little bit about how people volunteer to write letters. It sounds like BigTent will have letters for one thing, but if they want to go through your website, how do they do that?
Yeah. If you want to write letters, again, BigTent, they've always been great in making sure that folks are ready to do that. But if you do go to our website, we do have our DIY letter writing guide, and that's going to show you how to start writing letters independently to any of our 8 target states. You can just pick the state of your choice, and you can write those as long as those campaigns are going to be open on our platform. We use a platform called Sincere, and we're going to have those up and running. We've had them up and running for most of this year, and they're going to be running till about October. Again, we got cut that off a little sooner than we do texting because it's snail mail, and we want to make sure that those letters get to the folks that we're reaching out to in time, so that if they need help or if they have any questions, they have time to reach out to us ahead of the election. For your other question around specific Spanish language letterheads, we do not have those right now. We do have QR codes and information that leads directly to our website, and we have all of the information on our website in Spanish language as well. And so we encourage our voters and our volunteers to be directed to that, and that is how we try to do that currently and serve those folks.
Awesome. And what about if people want to do text banking with you? Is that all just go to the website and sign up to volunteer and they'll get opportunities?
Yeah, VoteRiders backslash volunteer if you want to text. I know folks are interested in that as well. And we have a text bank coming up this Thursday. We're going to be texting voters in the state of Arizona, and we're going to be doing some texting, letter writing, phone banking throughout the rest of the year. But if you want to get engaged, the quickest you can do that is next Thursday. You can join us to do that. We've started on a new platform called Call Up. And so we are planning to keep on pushing out our text messages and our phone banking for the remainder of the year. So there's definitely opportunities for you to get involved as soon as 2 days from now.
So is there a mobilized link for that, or should people just
There,
email that address?
there is, and let me. We keep talking. I can
Okay,
multitask,
I'll keep
and
talking.
I will.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I will drop that in the
yeah.
chat for everyone, actually.
If you
And
find it, and I'm sure the Big Tent folks will send it out after also. But this seems like such a great way for people to kind of jump in and get involved and hear from the whole team and start sending texts. So while you're finding that, I am going to look at the questions that we received before because a lot of you wrote in. All right, can you hear a question while you're looking for that link, Sylvester?
I can because I just found the link and I'm dropping it in the chat, and so I'm ready for your next
Hey,
question.
okay, good. Okay, somebody asked, are proof of citizenship requirements making voter registration more difficult due to cuts to vital records staffing, reduced access to services such as Vital Check and other bureaucratic hurdles, in addition to increasing costs and delays?
First, when we talk about voter ID, it's not making it more difficult, and what people have been asked to provide is kind of been standard across the board. And so what we do is we kind of help those voters when they need that information or when they need assistance. And so we've seen that more folks are struggling with that, but it's not been an issue that is more overwhelming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I have a question for you that I
Okay.
think maybe everybody can be helped by, which is we know that when you do sort of general polling about voter ID, it can be popular with Americans when they don't understand the problems with it. What language do you use to talk about voter ID laws to explain to people why they are actually restrictive? When the average American is like, well, why shouldn't they demand ID for voting? Like, so how do you talk about that in a way that educates and informs people about the difficulties with voter ID?
When we talk about voter ID, because the thing about voter ID, when you look at it in just like a broad spectrum, it affects people across the board. And but when people hear about who's campaigning to have more restrictive laws and stuff, that's kind of where the issue lies. And so we talk about it as, hey, we want every citizen that is eligible to vote to be able to have that voice. And so we either, if they're in a voter ID state, we want to make sure that they have the equipment, have the ID that they need to participate in those elections. And so we talk about it as a way that everyone should have an access to vote. Because I think personally, and I think as VoteRiders, we believe um, once everybody has the vote or everybody's able to cast a ballot, that's how you get the fairest election, the most honest. That's how you get the results that you want to see that are both impactful and most and talking most about the voting demographic. And so when you're cutting people off or when people are struggling, but you're not getting that genuine sense of who all is able to be a part of that and prepare. And so here at VoteRiders, we want to make sure that, hey, if these are the laws that are in place right now, we want to make sure everybody that is affected by this is able to still cast the ballot, able to still go and be part of these elections. And so that's kind of how I've always talked about it. I said, hey, if you want the freest or you want something that really represents the voter base, make sure that everybody has that access to the ballot and has a chance to make their voice heard.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So you're like, we're not going to argue about voter ID laws. We're just going to, if there are going to be voter ID laws, everybody should have access to those IDs so that the
Mhm.
representation is fair and broad, right? Does that sound right?
Correct.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, we have a question from Oregon where someone is saying, my question is how to get eligible registered voters to vote. voters have, Oregon has been vote by mail for over 20 years. Less than half of voters turned in their ballot for the May primary. Do you have any thoughts about how to get more people to vote? And Oregon, I don't think does have voter ID. I'm not positive about that, but I don't think they do. So
Let me pull
setting
up that.
ID requirements aside, how do we get more Americans to participate in the democratic process?
I think it's just like the onus on folks that who are engaged with this. I know one thing that I do, and the texting. People say, "Oh, texting is annoying." Text. I don't like texting, but guess what? It's a great way, in a mass way, to reach out to hundreds of thousands of voters, and sometimes, especially when we're speaking specifically around voter ID, they might already be prepared with the ID, but it serves as a reminder. And then what it can do is say, hey, you might be ready. Make sure your 3 friends are ready, or make sure your neighbor is ready. And so I think the onus comes on just engaging with folks who say, I'm interested in this and I want to be a part of this. We'll tell 2, 3 friends and kind of spread it and have that butterfly effect, maybe. Says the more that you're prepared, the more that you share with those folks, it comes across better. Because yeah, you get annoyed by text messages, but hey, if you knock on your neighbor's door, say, hey, are you prepared about this, or did you hear about what's on the ballot? Because a lot of folks hear about the things that are on the the big stuff, but then you want to make sure that folks hear about, well, hey, there's a ballot initiative. They're trying to increase taxes by 2%, our sales tax. That's something that everybody cares about. So you want to find ways that people can engage and just make it like personable to them.
Yep, right. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think part of it too is just like helping to elect better politicians who actually do things once they are in office, but that's probably not it. You guys are nonpartisan, so you're not going to talk about that. So let's see. Yeah, someone is asking about student IDs in Florida. One aspect of new ID law here in Florida is eliminating student IDs. Have you seen a lot of states coming after student IDs, and how do you help those kids?
Well, it's just interesting because it varies on state by state if student IDs are even accepted as a form of voter ID. I know here speaking to Florida specifically, Florida has a lot of interesting things that can count as an ID. A student ID is one of those things. But if you have a neighborhood ID or even a gym membership that has your photo on it and stuff, that could be acceptable form of ID in Florida. And so it varies state by state. And so what we see is folks are just trying to make it harder and harder to what's an acceptable form of ID. And so if voter ID is going to be a thing, expand it so that folks have that option and have different ways or different things that they can use to vote. In Georgia specifically, they only take IDs from public institutions. And so I went to a very storied private institution up in DC, actually, but Howard University. My dad and my sister, they went to Morehouse and Spelman. These are great institutions right down the street from Georgia Tech. But you can't use your Spelman or Morehouse ID when you go to vote. But if you have a Georgia Tech ID or a Georgia State ID, you can because they're public colleges. And so you see folks trying to take that back. And so it varies state by state in a sense. But we just want, my thing is, and our thing is, give everybody the access. So if this is acceptable, if this is an institution that folks can use it from, what's the problem from other folks using that as well?
So and then I think part of what VoteRiders does is just whatever the sort of complicated, crazy rules are, is that your job is just to inform people. Like, here's what you can use, here's what you can't use. We can help you get the things you can use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so a couple of people asking if I'm in a blue state, what is the best thing I can do to help people who are in voter suppression states?
Engage. Of course, we're talking about ways that you can work. Join our letter writing party. Start letter writing. Again, we're going to do that call to action. Start texting. Engage with folks across the board. Again, we're doing outreach. There's other organizations doing outreach to these states. And so it doesn't really matter where you're at. And that's the great thing about VoteRiders. We're a remote organization. I've met my colleagues, of course, and we come together, but we do all this work independently. And so we engage our volunteers on an independent basis. And you can do that work wherever you're at. So there's no excuse for saying why you can't get involved. It's just, hey, where we give you the option. Where do you want to be involved at?
Yeah, I love that. And people are saying there's someone from overseas saying we want to do a letter writing party here, but the event that you're doing on Thursday is at the wrong time for us. But it really sounds like this is all about you sign up, you get your letters, and then you have your letter writing party whenever you want. Like there's no real time constraints. And also Big Tent, I believe, is uh giving people also you can sign up with Big Tent, and I'm sure Big Tent will let us know how to sign up and get letters from them that are letters from VoteRiders. So
Well,
see what
again,
I'm
I'll
saying?
say the great thing about our letter writing program, you can do that independently. And that is something that
Right.
right after this call, you could join and start figuring that out. We've had volunteers that were in Australia and whatnot. Now, I don't know what that postage is going to look like and what what that might look like for them on their end. But if you want to get engaged and you're out of the states, you can still participate in that. Texting probably makes that a little bit harder for us just because of those time constraints and maybe some of issues with you being outside of the United States, but you can send a letter from anywhere and be a part of that work that we're doing.
That's fantastic. Okay, so I hope that's clear to everybody. This is all completely remote work. You can do it at any time. Boat Riders does occasionally have an event like they're having on Thursday, but if
Mm-hmm.
you can't make that event, there's ample opportunities to do
Ample.
this work remotely anytime you want. You may not be able to do the texting, but you can definitely do the letter writing. I have written many Vote Riders letters. They're very easy. The majority of the letter is pre-printed for you. So if I
Yes,
remember correctly, you're writing a short message at the top and then, right?
exactly. Yeah,
And
we
then
give
addressing
all
the,
the meats and potatoes there. Again, the acceptable forms of ID in the state that you're writing to, the contact information for vote writers, those key election dates for whatever state you're writing to. We just say, hey, why are you encouraged to write to this voter? Say, hey, I just wanted to write to a fellow voter, write to another friend. You add that short note at the top because that's what gets the voter that you're writing to actually engage with the letter because people receive mail all the time and advertisements are like, oh, I'm throw this out. But once they see that handwritten aspect, they're like, all right, well, what does the rest of this have to say? And that's kind of what hooks folks, make sure that they're prepared, and also make sure that if they're not prepared, they know to reach out to us.
do you have any idea? This will be my last question and we'll bring it back to Kitty, but do you have any idea how many voters you helped? I don't know if you have these numbers in front of you, but do you have any sense of your impact of what Vote Riders' impact has been on recent elections?
Yeah. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I can
Yeah.
tell last year we contacted over 12 million voters, and that is through the programs that we did
Wow.
with our texting program, our letter writing program, but also what is the core of it is the work that my colleagues have been doing on the ground. And so they're engaging with those voters on an individual basis. They're doing voter ID clinics, voters that reach out to us independently either to our website or through our partners. They're engaging with them. And so those numbers kind of speak towards all of the work we've done across the board, but they also show the work that we're doing on that state by state basis.
That is incredible. That's very impressive. And I'm assuming vote writers also can use donations. I know you didn't come here to ask for money, but like, can people donate to vote writers?
Well, Roy would be mad at me if I said no. And Roy is our development director. But yes, we can always use donations because guess what? That
Okay.
feels the work. It feels the text banking I doing, but it feels the individual part of actually helping those voters because those text banks, we reach out to hundreds of thousands of voters, but we want to make sure once we get to those voters or we identify voters that need assistance, we help them from start to finish. And so any donation that you have is helping that voter. I like to point out the $50 mark because no matter what state we're working in, when we have to start from the beginning and order a voter his or her birth certificate, that costs about $50 if we're
Yeah.
going through vital check or whatever the case is. And so once you make that, it's making sure that we are one step closer to getting that voter to the finish line. So yeah, if you ever feel led to give that way, I guess voteriders.org/donate. I didn't come to make that plug, but Roy was going to be glad that I did.
That it's my job to elicit that plug for because I think this is such incredibly valuable work. And I do know from many, many meetings I've been on that like the paying for the ideas is a massive obstacle for people. There are lots of people who maybe do want a ID and they know how to get it and they know where to get it. They don't have those fees. And so VoteRiders helping with that is a very big deal. So I am going to say, personally, I think this is a very good place for donor dollars. And so you didn't ask, I did. So there you go. But most importantly, I think Sylvester really is looking for volunteers and for people to just get involved. So with that, I'm going to thank Sylvester and bring it back to Kitty because this has been an incredible conversation and just excited to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Jessica and Sylvester. Yes, this was incredible and very inspiring. And I think for the Big Tent community, we were all feeling a little helpless after the election in 2024. And VoteRiders is a place that we return to because you inspire us, Sylvester, and your whole community does. And so we're really glad to be working with you again. And as Jessica mentioned, we will have letters available on our website. We make it really easy for you, so you can just go to the Big Tent website. But again, check out VoteRiders' website, and all of it will be in the recap as well. And to everyone who joined today, thank you for taking time out of your day. And to Jessica for all you do every single day, all the time, keeping us marching forward. We really appreciate it. And Sylvester, for your work, the work of VoteRiders and your whole team there. We're just deeply grateful. So have a good one, everyone. Thanks so much. Bye.